All right, everybody. Hope you're doing well. Welcome to another We've Read the Documents live stream. I'm your host, John Brisson. Today, we're going to continue our West Point investigation of the alleged child abuse that took place at a daycare center at the West Point United States Military Academy. The previous stream for this is not on YouTube. It got removed, and I got a strike for cyberbullying, harassment, and I don't even remember what the third claim was. This video will be up for my phone. Sorry about that. This video will be up for a day or two before I take it down. I am doing more streams and putting them up on my Subscribe Star. I started a whole series on the daycare abuse scandal of the Chicago Rogers Park Jewish Community Center, and I'm going to do a complete investigation of the alleged accusations of child abuse on my Subscribe Star, as well as I continue reading Happy Birthday, Planet Earth by Barbara Marx Hubbard and giving my commentary on her book too as well. So if you would like to see extra streams of mine, I will, work very hard of putting out, multiple ones per week. I'm sorry, in the past that I was kind of lax. YouTube took my Subscribe Star channel away or kept striking me for a while. Libri is supposed to allow you to do kind of like subscriber streams soon. So, once they get that made, I'll probably move over there and, stream on Libri and have subscriber-only streams there that will link back to my Subscribe Star. So, just wanted to make that known. So, if you want to get more information, where I read from The Battle and the Backlash, this child sexual abuse war by David Heckler. It was a book written, was it during the 80s or probably during the 90s. It's pretty much it's out of print now. 1988 copyright. Hopefully maybe one day I can reach out to David Heckler. I found him. Maybe I can interview him. He wrote an excellent book. So if you want to see the first stream, it is on my Libri. YouTube take off the first stream on the West Point witch hunt narrative. But today I will be reading from Rossi Chet's excellent book, which is non-conspiratorial. It is just the facts. And then that is The Witch Hunt Narrative, The Politics, Psychology, and Sexual Abuse of Children. And then I'm going to read a Daily Kos article about Rudy Giuliani, who I mentioned previously in the previous stream, that he was the United States Attorney for the Southern District of New York when the West Point, molestation cases were going on, as far as if there was going to be any trial or if anybody was going to be held accountable, and Giuliani buried it. Okay? CMP Giuliani buried it. All right, so we're going to read that article. I've talked about it last stream. But for now, we're going to read from Rossi Chet's Witch Hunt Narrative. Okay. So, the West Point Child Development Center case is not among a handful of cases commonly mentioned in the Witch Hunt Narrative, but appears on Charlie and Downing's list of 36. Although barely remembered today, it received a considerable amount of publicity in its time. It was the subject of an article in Newsweek in July 1985 and an article in Redbook in January 1986. And is one of the two major case studies in a chapter of David Heckler's prophetic 1988 book, The Battle and the Backlash. Those works were all sympathetic to the view that children have been sexually abused at West Point Child Development Center. They did not cast the case as a witch hunt. To the contrary, there was the sense that too little was being done to address the definite child abuse. But the case was also mentioned in one of Debbie Nathan's earliest witch hunt articles, and it later appeared on Charler and Downing's list. As explained, allegations grew to include several children, animal sacrifices, pornography, and rituals involving people wearing bloody Dracula-type masks. So how many of these cases do we hear that child pornography was shot and distributed? Probably among the elite and very sick individuals around the world. But how many times? I mean, the Glendale Montessori School case, There was alleged child pornography being shot there. So I mean, it's just a common. Remember, pornography wasn't as widely distributed back then. I guess it was, but the access to it wasn't like the internet age that we live in now, where you're 2 clicks away from a pornography website. So, I mean, this is, most of these cases occurred during the 1980s, and a lot of them, there were accusations of pornography being filmed and shot with high-tech video cameras for the time. So, let's just keep that in mind. Nobody was charged in the case. Charlie and Downing's 3-sentence description ends. An investigation concluded there were no indications of abuse, but insufficient evidence to prosecute. The nature of these indications is not explained, nor is a rationale provided for why a case with indications of abuse but no actual charges will be included in a series about justice abused. The case began on July 27, 1984, when a 3.5-year-old girl came home from a full day at the West Point Child Development Center and screamed with pain while urinating in the bathroom. That sounds like a UTI or some sort of sexually transmitted disease, which at that age, sadly, tragically can come from molestation. That's an aside, but that's a medical aside. Her mother observed that she was bleeding from her vagina and so immediately took her doctor to the Keller Army Hospital. The girl told a technician and the doctor that her teacher did it. She also told the doctor she put a pin in my tushy. The doctor observed that the girl had lacerations in her vaginal canal and indicated on the report that these internal injuries had most likely occurred within 2 to 4 hours before 5:15 p.m. The only place the girl had been during the time was the daycare center. About 2 weeks later, another child made statements to her parents about being touched sexually by a quote-unquote teacher at the daycare center. She and her family had been on vacation in late July and early August, and they did not know about the girl who went to the emergency room on July 27th. But the second girl did not name the same teacher who had been implicated earlier. Her father, a United States Army doctor, who would know, by the way, this is an aside, he would know, okay, he's a doctor, he would know the signs of sexual abuse, okay, in, his daughter, all right? He's not just an average layman person. He's not just an average parent. He is a doctor. And when you read the information, in the previous stream from Heckler's book, or even listen to me discuss it, the military tried to promote the man. They tried to buy a silence about the molestation of his daughter, and he did not go through with that. So, definitely listen to the previous stream. Definitely listen. Her father, a United States Army doctor, was convinced by statements from his daughter that she had been sexually abused. The teachers at the center were questioned by investigators from the Army, administered lie detector tests, and quickly cleared as suspects. 2 of the teachers were later reconsidered as suspects, but nobody was ever charged or disciplined. The doctor assumed came to the conclusion the Army was intent on minimizing or denying child sexual abuse. Yeah. Oh, boy. I've always wondered if Colonel Mike Lucchino ever was there at West Point. I have no proof, but I've always wondered that. Ultimately, the FBI undertook a massive investigation that included 950 interviews and the screening of about 50 children by a child psychologist. There was never a public accounting of any sort, but the core number of victims was apparently around a dozen. A brief memo to the FBI director after 28 children had been screened stated that 10 were probably victims and an additional 8 were either abused or witnessed sexual abuse of other children. There were 9 parties to the settlement of the civil suit. So there was a settlement of the civil suit. 2 prominent families in the criminal case did not participate fully in the civil case. They actually withdrew from it. Okay, that's usually a sign. That they don't want money. Okay, this isn't a money grip. This isn't false accusations. Okay, they want justice. All right. They want justice that their children had been molested in institutional elite pedophilia, okay? In other words, there were 11 key children in this case, although 1 or 2 were ever publicly identified. Fortunately, little information is available about these children and their statements. A grand jury in the Southern District of New York heard evidence about this case for 10 months before U.S. Attorney Rudolph Giuliani declared that there was insufficient evidence to bring charges. Of course, CMP CFR Giuliani did that. Of course he did. Hey, was it Country Walk? Was it Janet Reno? I know it was Janet Reno, but was it Country Walk? Yeah, I think it's Country Walk case. Let's see here. Yeah. Hey, at least Janet Reno persecuted Fooster in the Country Walk case, all right? Say what you want about Reno. She at least got the job done, all right? Giuliani covered it up. Now, granted, there could have been more people involved in Fooster and Country Walk, and there likely were, and maybe that was a cover-up, was that someone had to go down, and so Reno made sure the conviction of Fooster happened. That's possible, too, all right? I'm no Janet Reno stan, okay? But at least someone was prosecuted in that case, okay? All right. He noted there was credible evidence that children had been sexually abused, but he said one couldn't be absolutely sure of who did it. The law does not require absolute certainty. It requires certainty beyond a reasonable doubt. So why is the West Point case on the witch hunt list? Because a number of children made ritualistic allegations. How extensive and significant were these statements? There's apparently no way to ascertain the answer. The videotapes child interviews are under seal. Well, of course they are. And the FBI's own reports are subject to redaction, which is substantial. Well, of course it is. The source of Chandler and Downling's description is likely a self-reflecting group of parents who started seeing the case as ritualistic. They made claims in the public realm, claims that I think strain credulity. One of the parents involved in the case became thoroughly convinced that the abuse at West Point was ritualized and satanic, part of a national network of pedophiles who worked out of the daycare centers. Other parents followed suit. Now, I disagree with Rossi Chet there, okay? There definitely was satanic ritual abuse happening in multiple places in the United States during the witch hunt narrative, throughout the 80s and 90s. I believe it still occurs today. Obviously, I think it also occurred before the 80s and 90s. But now, however, because if anybody brings it up, where you believe that, the institutionalized pedophilia or sexual abuse of children is occurring, what do you, Salem witch trials? What do you want to have a witch hunt? You want to have a witch hunt like the Satanic Panic back in the 80s and 90s? Huh? In short, the West Point case was a mixture of incredible claims and verified abuse. Some parents faced with a non-responsive bureaucracy that seemed to be stonewalling succumbed to conspiracy theories of the case, their exasperation, which is at least partially based on realities that have not been recognized in the witch hunt narrative. And as an important part of the story of this case, part distinguish it from being a witch hunt, is the failure to hold perpetrator responsible for, at the very least, inflicting vaginal puncture wounds on a little girl. So, now again, Rossi Chet's book is non-conspiratorial. However, it does prove, Rossi Chet's book proved it. I do believe that people should read it. It's a very tough, difficult read. It's very long. At the bare minimum in all these cases, if we take out the satanic institutional, ritual abuse element of these cases, okay, let's take the other position that part doesn't exist, okay. I believe that it does. Also, some people could say me being as a Christian, it taints my worldview of that. I would say it still doesn't make my worldview incorrect. Obviously, Christianity is truth, but still nonetheless. But at the bare minimum, in many of these numerous cases, children were molested. The bare minimum, they were molested. Grand maximum, majority of them were connected to some sort of elite, satanic, institutionalized pedophilia across the globe, okay? I believe the latter to be true in most of these cases. George from CavDev.org believes the latter to be true in most of these cases. But at the bare minimum, and Rossi Chet's book does prove this. And there's a few cases in here where it was not the people who were accused, it was the parents, likely, who tragically abused their children. But the cases are few and far between. Most cases, Rossi Chet is able to prove through the documents, through research, through police reports, through court documents, through newspaper clippings, through interviews, that the bare minimum majority of these cases, tragically, children were sexually abused, which is horrific. And a lot of people like to say that, oh, well, those daycare cases, it was all, it was witch hunting. I've even played the clip, but you can go back and look at my channel, Jordan Peterson, talking about McMartin Preschool, and just, talking about how the kids just wanted to please the cops and their families, so they told fantastical stories that don't exist. Okay, Peterson's a scumbag. All right, Jordan Peterson's a scumbag. He's even, I need to find it. I didn't play it for this channel. Maybe I have it on my Twitter, but he even recently restated again the witch hunt narrative about those kids being misled. So he doubled down recently about that. So he was blaming the kids. He was blaming the victims, that they were making all these fantastical stories in McMartin for candy and for pats on the head and for attaboys. It's disgusting. So let's read this article from the Daily Kos about Giuliani's involvement in covering up the abuse at West Point daycare. Okay, so let's see here. Back in 1984, Giuliani was the United States Attorney for the Southern District of New York. During that time, allegations began to surface about physical and sexual abuse perpetrated on children at the daycare center at the United States Military Academy at West Point. The allegations were addressed by West Point officials in a significant manner after a 3-year-old girl was seen by a military physician for a lacerated vagina. With 2 of the alleged abusers being civilian workers at the daycare, the matter was turned over to the FBI to investigate, and Giuliani was in charge of the case. After Giuliani failed to indict anyone for the abuse, some of the parents filed a civil suit and were eventually awarded $2.7 million from the government in 1991. The Times-Herald Record, the local paper, covered the allegations, but the story was picked up nationally after Giuliani failed to indict anyone. The Washington Post ran a story on how one of the fathers refused promotion. That was the military doctor. Okay. Over anger that no criminal charges were filed, and it seemed like more interest was put towards protecting West Point's image than protecting children or justice. If that doesn't typify the CMP Bush administration and what CMP CFR Giuliani administration will look like, I don't know what does. An Army doctor rejected promotion to major at a public ceremony yesterday because he said officials have failed to respond adequately to charges that his daughter, 3, and other children were sexually abused at the daycare center of the United States Military Academy at West Point. Captain Walter R. Grote, 33, told a gathering at a promotion ceremony at Fort Dix, New Jersey, "I cannot accept promotion in a system that at first refused to acknowledge and now refuses to deal with the victims of extensive child abuse that occurred at the West Point Child Development Center." West Point's spokesman, Colonel John Yeagley, said the academy had taken the charges of abuse very seriously from the onset. Nearly a year ago, referring the matter to the FBI once Army investigators determined that two suspects were civilians. Had to cover that up. Cover that. A federal grand jury has been hearing the allegations that 11 children from ages 13 months, good God, to 3 1/2 were sexually or physically abused at a facility near the Academy athletic field. One suspect was transferred to administrative duties with the Post Division, the overseas daycare center, Eagley said. The other has left the Academy workforce. During the civil proceedings, an independent medical team from the UPenn was brought in as well to investigate the abuse. When all was said is done, the Army paid 11 families $2.7 million in the settlement. It seems like Giuliani had the good fortune of his name being kept out of the New York Times article that covered the settlement in 1991, even though he was a New York City mayoral candidate in 1989, of course, gearing up his run again in 1993. The federal government has agreed to pay $2.7 million to 8 children who said they were sexually and physically abused in the early 1980s at a daycare center run by the Army in the Military Academy at West Point, New York. Lawyers for the children said the total settlement was large enough for a child abuse case in which no criminal charges were filed. Two women who worked at the West Point Development Center have been accused in the case, but a year-long investigation by the Federal Bureau of Investigation found insufficient evidence to prosecute. Officials said in 1985. The official in charge currently during that time was Rudolph Giuliani. $615,000 to one girl. And papers filed yesterday in the Federal District Court in Manhattan, a $615,000 $615,000 settlement to a girl who is now 10 closed a 5-year case. Her lawyer said an Army doctor had confirmed her sexual abuse at the age of 3. This is the victim with the lacerated vagina. The girl received $65,000 in personal injury claims, $100,000 for a college fund, and $450,000 in 5-year installments from the ages of 25 to 50. The government also paid her lawyer's fee, which was $55,115. Charges made in 1984. Charges of sexual abuse first emerged in 1984 when 11 children reported being fondled and abused by the two women who worked at the center between 1981 and 1984, helped by a judge's ruling. A 1987 opinion on the case by Judge Whitman Knapp reinforced a claim of negligence. Mr. Crane stated the judge wrote that prior to the time of the injuries were inflicted upon the infant plaintiffs. Several complaints regarding improper treatment of the children at the daycare center have been filed with the center itself and with the Inspector General at West Point. The plaintiffs and other parents have complained to center employees and supervisors about strange marks, bites, blisters apparently caused by burns, and genital and anal rashes, but had all been told it was normal, the judge wrote. The government took no action to investigate either the allegations of child abuse at the center or the removal of children from the daycare facility. Subsequently, the Supreme Court ruled that the government could be sued for negligence by its employees. Giuliani is not mentioned in the above New York Times piece, but he is mentioned in the Times Herald Record story, which came out at the same time after the settlement. A legacy of pain. Settlement doesn't ease abused children's fear. West Point. 7 years have passed since she was sexually abused at the West Point Child Care Center. Yet today, the 10-year-old girl can't go to the bathroom without her mother waiting by the door. The girl who was 3 when West Point child care workers were accused of sexually abusing her and 10 other children in 1984 also asked her mother about whether she will be able to bear children when she grows up. Oh, God. As a father, this is just it's rough. This happened several years ago, and it's not any better, the girl's mother said. She's constantly asking, what if we're out in the store, Mommy, and we see these people? Are they going to hurt me? What people? People from the daycare center? Huh. But this is constantly on her mind because she knows these people are not in jail for what they did. Wow, so there's probably more than just the two women. There's probably more than just the two women. In the United States District Court files in Manhattan, the West Point sexual abuse case is resolved. The government failed in 1985 to indict any suspects in its criminal investigation, but last month it settled a civil suit brought by the parents of the 11 victims. 9 of the victims will receive $2.7 million, with awards ranging from $25,000 to $625,000. But even as the legal dust is settled, the case lingers a legacy of the pain for these families. These people stole our children, the mother said. She's nothing like she used to be. She's a very angry little girl. She doesn't trust anyone. She's nothing like she was before this happened. It's never going to be over for them or for us. Yeah, because no one was ever held accountable. Despite 950 interviews by 60 FBI agents assigned to the investigation led by former United States Attorney Rudolph Giuliani produced no federal grand jury indictments. The investigation did find significant indications that children may have been abused at the center. Until now, no official reports or investigations have been verified the sexual abuse. The Times Herald Record, however, has learned that a still-secret independent report prepared by one of the nation's top experts on child sexual abuse confirms the children's accusations of abuse. The report also played a vital role in ending a 7-year legal ordeal and enabling the case to be settled without the children undergoing potential hostile questioning on the witness stand, said United States District Judge Whitman Knapp, who heard the civil case. The expert, Dr. Ann Wolbert Burgess, a professor of psychiatric nursing at the University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia and the author of the book Child Pornography and Sex Rings, entered the case in 1989. I wonder if you can even, does this book even still exist? Let's see. Dr. Ann Burgess. We have Lanning referencing it, the FBI agent Lanning, and oh boy, he was a piece of work. I can get a copy of it. All right, yeah. I'm probably going to pick up a copy, guys. I can pick a copy for about $16. Good condition. Yeah, okay. I'll pick up a copy of it. She interviewed all the children, she said yesterday, that her goal in the case had been to reduce harm to the children because testimony in the open court could have triggered symptoms of abuse prompted by resurfacing of the original incident. Knapp said that because Burgess worked for neither the government nor the plaintiffs but reported directly to the court, her findings carried additional credibility. Neither Burgess nor others would speak about her specific findings. You could draw your own conclusions from the fact that the government paid all this money, Knapp said about Burgess's report. The government would have likely paid the money unless the report gave them a basis for doing that. The family's lawyer, William E. Crane, who now practices in Elkin, North Carolina, and formerly worked in Newburgh, I don't know where Elkin is, so the report is independent confirmation of these children's claims. He received nearly $300,000 in legal fees in the case. The amount, 25% of the settlement, is set by law. Just generally speaking, it corroborated the children's allegations there had been sexually abused by the daycare center staff, Crane said of the report. The report was sealed and never been seen by anybody else, and I hope it never will be, Knapp said. That has all the intimate details of what happened to these children. Certainly they don't want to be plagued by that when they grow up. Yes, I understand that, but justice was never served. The government, however, admitted none of these allegations is making the settlement. Edward T. Ferguson III, the assistant United attorney in charge of this case, declined to comment on Burgess's role. He said that the settlement was in the best interest of the children, did not require them to testify in court. Everyone involved, the parents, the government, and the court, all wished to avoid the children taking the witness stand if an accommodation could be reached, Ferguson said. Among other things, several of the settlements made individually with each child's family provide for medical costs, counseling, and a college fund. Actual cost of the settlement is $1.175 million. Much of the money will be invested and paid out to the victims' lives, therefore increasing the total to $2.7 million. Their children, they're going to have to live with what happened to them. So are their parents, Crane said. But in terms of the legal work, the legal end of it is finished. The Army's reaction to the parents' plight so enraged former Army Dr. Walter R. Grote that the ex-captain refused a promotion. Yeah, he actually left the Army. To major in 1985 because of the treatment of his child sexual abuse case at West Point. He's one of the first parents to follow the lawsuit, but later dropped out of seeking money from the case. Unfortunately, money can't undo the trauma incurred by scores of children at West Point because people with responsibility didn't exercise that responsibility, said Grote, now in the private practice in New Jersey. What the hell is a settlement? They could have caught these people doing it at the time they were doing it. We have a tendency to think that everything that's evil and bad is on the other side of the Pacific or the Atlantic, and that's not the case. The mother of the 10-year-old said the settlement will pay her daughter's college bills, but the mother said she would have preferred the government kept this money and punished the abusers. Without the prosecution, West Point has retained its polished national image, she said. Even last month, the government admitted none of the allegations in making the settlement, a reminder of what the parents say that West Point's callous denial. They wouldn't acknowledge what happened, the mother said. I'm sure if it was done anywhere else but West Point, it would have been acknowledged. The monetary settlement, however, did not resolve the parents' bitterness over what they still maintain was a botched FBI investigation. In fact, court papers filed by parents showed federal investigators not only refused to believe the children, but in some cases also criticized some parents for not keeping their children under control in their homes. Whoa. Blaming the victims. Blaming the parents. Wow. Some shrewd federal investigators. When the agents came to the house, they did not appear to have a tape recorder, and they were not taking statements during the interview, one parent said in a sworn statement according to 1984 court papers. He became annoyed and frustrated and said, it looks like she's just trying to get attention. Wow. Recall Grote, the tragedy is the abusers could have been caught with a little imagination and a less chauvinistic narcissism on the part of West Point and the initial FBI investigator. I don't know if it's not because of chauvinistic narcissism. It's because he was trying to cover it up. Come on, newspaper. What kind of language is this during that time period? Because the FBI investigator was a chauvinist and he was a narcissist. No, it's because he was called there to cover it up. Recall Grote that, prosecutor Giuliani did not return calls last week. In 1987, Giuliani said his detailed investigation showed only one or two children were abused. A federal investigation cleared the center staff members accused by the children. Wow, they went back to work or went back to work somewhere else? Oh boy. The mother of the 10-year-old girl still tries to cope with the abuse's aftermath. As far as I'm concerned, the government gave them a license to go out and abuse other children, the mother said. I have to explain to my daughter these people are still out there, and she still has nightmares. She's afraid they're going to come through the window at night to get her. So you have 2 staff members who are removed and laid off to go to who knows where. Yep. Giuliani knew there were multiple children being abused, yet he did not indict anyone. Now receiving justice from Giuliani, the parents pursued civil action. The government ended up paying 11 victims $2.7 million for protecting its image thanks to Rudy Giuliani. So there you go. That is it. Hope everybody's doing well out there. God bless. This is a very tough subject, but still needs to be brought to light. Take care, everybody. God bless.